I've said this in many videos in the past. How do you take over a country without firing a shot? You import voters. You import refugees. Let's take a listen to this. It's kind of like having a glass filled halfway with milk, the milk being American citizens. And then you pour water into that glass and you water it down. And eventually you do not have an American way of life. You do not have an American value system. You just don't have the American values anymore.
Reaction on another remark the president made on something that has gotten a lot of attention coming off the Hill there. Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, as you know, apologized for a tweet that trafficked in an anti-Semitic trope.
She's watering it down, just like my milk analogy. She basically did multiple tweets and even did a video that was anti-Semitic and anti-America, blaming America on all the radical Muslims, the terrorists. It is America's fault.
This was the president's reaction moments ago.
Congressman Omar is terrible what she said, and I think she should either resign from Congress or she should certainly resign from the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
I wholeheartedly agree. Where are all those activist groups that every time a conservative so much as blinks the wrong way, they want them to step down from office? Where are they all? Where are all those politicians who demand retribution to the slightest word that is said incorrectly? This lady shouldn't even be allowed to resign. They should pick her up and throw her down the stairs of the House of Congress, the House of Representatives. They should just throw her out on her ass.
What she said is so deep-seated in her heart that her lame apology, and that's what it was lame.
What does he mean by deep-seated? She was bred with these ideologies. And that is why in many past videos I said nobody, no first-generation refugee should be allowed to do two things: vote or be voted into office. In order for that refugee family to have a vote, they should at least have one offspring. Then that offspring, when they're allowed to vote, of age, they should be allowed to vote. But a first-generation refugee, their heart is still where they came from. And I'm going to tell you where this person came from.
And she didn't mean a word of it, was just not appropriate. I think she should resign from Congress, frankly.
Throw her out.
But at a minimum, she shouldn't be on committees, certainly that committee.
What do you think about that, him saying that?
Brianna, I have a couple thoughts here. Number one, Ilhan Omar is a brand new member of Congress, still kind of finding her feet. What is she here about 45 days now?
He's making excuses. Well, she's new. She needs to learn the ropes. It was a mistake. It was an accident. What he's really probably wanting to say is, she's only been here for 45 days. She needs to learn how to keep her anti-Semitic, anti-American remarks, keep her feelings hidden so she can cause damage to this country. Learn to keep her mouth shut. It was an accident. You're always told that accidents are like, we can call them mistakes, accidents, but it's like a flip in a coin of a coin. Sometimes you're going to get heads, sometimes you're going to get tails. Isn't it funny that these accidents are always negative, anti-American? I mean, accidents, it's a chance. It's a game of chances.
and people make mistakes, and she apologized for it.
She apologized for it. That means it was never done. You should forget about it. The harm was undone. She didn't mean it.
I have to tell you, Brianna, I couldn't be prouder.
You couldn't be prouder. You couldn't be more proud. That's the right way to say it. There's no word of prouder. Freaking idiot. More proud
Of top Democratic leadership for insisting that she apologized for those bad remarks that she had, I guess, tweeted. I couldn't be prouder of top Democratic House leadership for asking her and making her apologize.
Next. Well, actually, I want to read this. A little bit about Omar. And what do I mean by deep-seated first generation? Omar was born, I'm reading right here, by the way. I mean, right there. October 4th, 1981. She was born in Mogadishu and spent her early years in Beit Habo, Somalia. She was the youngest of her 7 siblings. Eventually, she and her family fled and spent 4 years in a refugee camp in Kenya. Don't forget what Mogadishu is. It's Black Hawk Down. Remember the movie, the true story of our sniper SEAL teams? That's Mogadishu. She grows up, she comes here and immediately gets put into Congress, gets voted into Congress. And how does she perform such a feat? I told you earlier in the video, in order to take over a country without firing a shot, you import voters or refugees. Now, as a Democrat, you get tired. Now it's the Democrats are all for, the left, all for importation of refugees. Remember this. As a leftist, you don't like how that state is voting or that city. They're voting too conservative. So what you do is you pretend to care for the people. Oh, those poor Somalis. Oh, we need to let some in. And guess what? We got the perfect place for you to live. Boom. They've taken over one city or one state at a time. I want you to now focus your attention on this news article. Islam has transformed my state. Remember, Omar's from Minnesota. Minnesota was a cozy, quiet environment before the introduction of massive third world immigration. But that has changed with the arrival of Somali refugees, according to former U.S. Representative Michelle Bachmann. Shut down some of these windows, they're distracting me. Minnesota is no longer the state I moved to in the mid-1960s. Then we were a well-ordered society with high-functioning population. Notice, with a high-functioning population, meaning that these people now do not work. Now Minnesota, I'm highlighting part of it so you can see where I'm reading from. Now Minnesota has the largest Somali, mostly Muslim, community in the United States, and I'll get to that, with a census numbers of putting the population around 40,000. I just read an up-to-date article. It says it's around 80,000. It is the biggest Somali community in North America, possibly in the world outside of East Africa. So basically, it is Africa. It's like the central hub of the Somali diaspora, you could say. Minnesota is a super liberal state, right there. Super liberal state. And they have that whole history. This is a very important paragraph. They have that whole, wow, I just totally messed that up. It's right here again. Minnesota, they have that whole history of accepting refugees from, I think, initially Vietnam and the Hmong and then the Bosnian crisis. So they have this whole infrastructure set up already in terms of nonprofit agencies, NGOs, where their primary purpose is just resettling refugees. But this community of Somali refugees has effectively disengaged from American society, according to Bachman, leading to the denigration of the culture of Minnesota, as well as a host of other social problems. We've heard about those social problems from the UK, you know, the raping and everything. So at one time it was not a super liberal state. This is a failed multicultural experiment that is killing people and destroying the future of the West. Right there, that very first sentence. How do you take over a country without firing a shot? Import refugees. You settle them in strategic locations. They'll destroy themselves, and they'll vote in the people that they're used to voting in. Parallel societies kill a simulation from the third world and create havoc in American societies, Bachman said, noting that the Somali population in Minnesota has chosen to largely ignore the simulation into America culture, seeking instead to live in completely Somali communities. I'm not even going to get into too much of this article, and I'm just not talking about Muslims. This is not an anti-Muslim video. It's an anti-American video. Many of the people we are importing, or in our southern border here in Nogales, we're importing a lot of people who want to become American citizens, but do not wish to become Americans. They don't care for our American culture, our American values, and our American way of life. I'm going to read you one last thing, and then I will let you go here. Actually, I might read two more things. I'm all confused. As we go. I want you to watch this. And got to do with the commercial. I'm almost done with the video.
Minnesota's 5th District, with 78% of the vote go.
Normally when elections are won, it's normally won by the skin of your teeth, 49 to 51, or I should say 51 to 49, 52 to 48. They're really neck and neck. How does somebody get 78.3% of the voting population to vote for them? They're all Somalis, just like she is. Again, how do you take over a country without firing a shot? And I'm not saying that the Somalis are trying to take us over. I'm saying the leftists are trying to take us over. They're just using Somalis and other Muslim communities in doing this. The Mexicans are another one of the leftist weapons of choice. 78%. Minnesota, where this lady is from, it has the largest Somali population outside of Africa. The very largest Somali population outside of Africa. Folks, if you go to Minnesota, you're pretty much in a suburb of Africa. I have no problems with refugees. I have no problems with immigrants. What I have a problem is these refugees and immigrants coming over and bringing their values and trying to change our country into what they claim they're fleeing from. Think of that for a second. Are they really fleeing? No, they're coming over here for the free stuff. Anyway, folks, you have a great day. Better wake up. We're being taken over.